I think the preparation for a child's immune function begins even before the child is conceived. And the onus lies on the mother and the father both. You can't just have a healthy mother and an unhealthy father and expect to have a super healthy child.
Dr. Rao, thank you so much. I am always indebted to you because she's very, very sweet. I know she's extremely busy. My Instagram, as soon as I go live with her or I do a webinar with her, is always flooded with, "Can I please, can I please see her?" Or, "How did you manage to get through Dr. Rao? She's so tough to get through." Or, "Wow, you're speaking to Dr. Rao." So I'm always inundated with messages, but I'm just very, very grateful that my messages don't go unreplied, and she does this for us time and again. So I'm having a huge fangirl moment right now. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you so much. Your blue tick does a lot of, it has an eyeball effect, you see.
Oh my God, I thought it was this.
See, there is also what you bring to the table. There are genuine questions that you come with, and it has a genuine response, and that is.
Today's conversation, Dr. Rao, and for everyone who's listening to us, watching us, is to make sure that as parents, we are building the right foundation for our children. Those foundational years are so important. As moms and dads, we're so vulnerable that at that point in time, we just don't want to see our child suffer, and we are okay with, अच्छा कोई कुछ भी कह रहा है, we're ready to adapt and absorb that because we don't want to see our child suffer, right? I want you to share on a couple of important pointers on nutrients and care in the formative years of a child's life, which builds a very, very strong foundation.
So contrary to normal perception that you need to have the first 5 years or 7 years that are very important, I think the preparation for a child's immune function begins even before the child is conceived. And the onus lies on the mother and the father both. You can't just have a healthy mother and an unhealthy father and expect to have a super healthy child. You need both parents to be on the same thought process, on the same parallel line, and have both of them to have good, enjoy good health at least a year prior to their conception. So the way it works is, if you have had a health challenge, let's say a few months before you've conceived, for sure that spills over into your pregnancy, for sure that spills into the child's immune system. And then when the baby is growing up, you start noticing XYZ things happening and you don't know why. And you're trying to you point fingers to perhaps food that he ate or environment that he's growing in, but he's already come with a predisposition. Mm-hmm. And that expresses itself. So we need to be very mindful. I had a very peculiar case once. A lady called us and she said that my son has been diagnosed with lymphoma. He's only a 9-year-old boy. And it was quite baffling because the child looked very healthy, well built, eating extremely well, eating all vegetables, ticking all the boxes, doesn't eat junk, eats all vegetables, goes to school, plays a lot, everything. So there shouldn't be a reason for him to develop a cancer. I asked the mother her history. Turned out that 2 months before she conceived him, she had just finished her treatment for tuberculosis, and nobody told her that you should wait at least 6 months before conceiving. So it's a very small thing. I'm not saying that causes lymphoma. I'm just saying that perhaps in her body it has taken her longer to recover. So with each parent needs to understand this first. Spend time, invest in yourself a year, 6 months at least minimum before conceiving, and then have a baby, and you'll have a better experience with pregnancy. So vomiting will not be so bad, you cravings, aversions will not be so bad, your ability to digest food will be better, you will feel better, you'll have a sense of well-being, you'll have a smoother delivery. So whether it's a c-section or a natural birth, it depends on the circumstances, but essentially both will be okay. Your recovery postpartum will be okay, the blues will be less, breastfeeding wouldn't. So everything then, like dominoes, instead of dominoes falling, this is like dominoes building.
Right, right, which is so important. Also, you mentioned about try and minimizing, you know, medicines earlier on in the first 1 year, right? So, and typical ailments would be cough, cold, wheezing, especially people living by the sea. Wheezing is a very, very common thing for us. So, what would you say are the long term impacts of all of this medication on a child? Um, and how the delaying of it makes it better for us.
So it's very simple. It is only to know that each of these things, every episode of every bout of cold, every bout of cough is actually a method by which the child has primed itself to agents in the environment. Okay. We can't abort those processes. If there is no wheezing, if there is no high fever, if there is no distress, the child is sleeping fairly okay, wakes up a couple of times, shouldn't be considered a red flag. Child is eating well, smiling, child is smiling means don't do anything. The minute the child stops smiling and becomes really dull and lethargic, that's when you need to worry a little bit, maybe get a couple of opinions, and then sit and relax. But as long as the child is playful, don't do anything. The short term impact is that today you give a round of antibiotics or cold medicine or something. For 4 or 5 days, the child is not going to eat. Immediate short term impact. The child's bowel movements will be affected. There'll be loose motions or constipation, a lot of gasiness. And following that, for a month or so afterwards, they don't seem to have the same taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
Right? So for the short term impact lasts about 2 months. And then what do? Then how long do you wait for this to get better? And then that's when parents start to worry, why is he not eating, what's happening, and why is he only asking for milk and not eating vegetables? And you start thinking that you should hide the vegetables and give, but you don't realize that it has come as a short term impact of something that you gave. So that's therefore you have to evaluate whether that is absolutely necessary and can the child get better without it. We all got better without it. There's a whole generation of people that did not receive it, and they reached in their 80s and 90s and they're okay. Yes, there were a few who suffered, but now we live in a time of information. So don't go only by one opinion. Take two opinions and figure out the best of two. Have an alternative opinion as well, and then understand how important it is to treat that particular episode. With post vaccination, because I've worked with Dr. R. Kenneth, he would say, let that fever is what? It's an indication of antibody production. So allow that fever to be, to ride it out. So unfortunately, a lot of the people, I think one thing that comes to my mind is most moms say that I don't know what will happen in the night, and I think they're worried about that. But I think you should get the reassurance from your practitioner, and then, one night of disturbance, next night everything will be okay. So it's a trade-off. What are you willing to trade off? I would always weigh that option first, right? Is it my sleep and my work that is more important, or is it my child's gut microbiome that is more important?
Right. No. Also, Dr. Rao, you speak a lot on, and for everyone who's listening, if you're following her on Instagram, it's Real Homeopathy. And I actually have, by the way, I should say that I have a folder of screenshots of Dr. Rao's stories. I'm not joking. I'm going to send you a screenshot of this of the folder, right from the spotted banana episode to this morning's curry patta post. It is, it's crazy how much I respect you, but you focus so much on the food, right? The food aspect of it, and medicine as a byproduct of food, right? Like it's in the background, but the food is the real medicine. So tell me, when we're in those foundational years, we know parents who will say, नहीं बच्चे को 2 साल तक मिर्ची नहीं दी, 3 साल, or there is separate food that is being cooked for the child 2 years, 3 years, or we don't even know how long the mirchi is eliminated. And there is so much of external influence that we're eliminating a lot of our Indian herbs, like spices like the hing or the ghee or the jeera and all of that. Tell me essential spices that should be added to the child's meal within the first 18 months to 24 months.
Cumin, turmeric, hing, ghee, and namak.
Right.
5 essential that should always be there over and above everything.
Right. Salt for one?
Salt, yeah. Well, of course. So the whole salt concept actually originated in a place where children were given bottled food, which contains sodium benzoate or sodium phosphate as a preservative.
Okay.
We don't do that in India. How many Indian moms are giving bottled jar foods to babies? No.
I can't even.
How many of us pre-cook our meals with a preservative and then give it to the child? So why should we be afraid of sodium? We should put the sodium is an essential component of entire digestive tract and for the nerves and muscles. If you don't give sodium, then there are problems. But the sodium should be such, it should be a mix of different salts. So not just iodized salt, but a mix of sea salt, sometimes pink salt, sometimes Himalayan salt, sometimes the sea, whatever, rock salt or whatever. You taste the food. It shouldn't taste too salty, it shouldn't taste too bland, it should taste just right. You have to like it and then feed the child. If you're going to make separate food for the child, which is blandish, devoid of spices, good kind of spices, and expect the child to eat, it is everybody's guess what's going to happen.
Right.
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 So, and I'm a very proud homeopath. But before homeopathy or any other field of medicine came into existence, there was only food as medicine. Right? We must never ignore that. The reason I talk about food, even though I'm not a qualified nutritionist, is only because food is truly medicine.
Right. Right. And about the spices, the mirchi in the food, does that
So
play?
mirchi in the food depends on your your cultural this thing. I used to have in the first when my daughter was less than a year old, I used to have a Hyderabadi nanny work for me, and she would insist up mirchi do, up mirchi do, and I'd be like, I don't eat mirchi, so how can I give my child mirchi? She said हमारे यहाँ हैदराबाद में वो 9 महीने का बच्चा को हम मिर्ची का चटनी खिलाते हैं. Now, culturally, they are programmed to eat that kind of mirchi because it is so hot there, and it also makes them drink water when they have that mirchi. Or it gives them that strength because it is rajas. Rajas is important for activity, right? So, culturally, what is acceptable, you should do. But in my opinion, by the time the child is 15 to between 15 and 18 months old, you should let the child integrate to eat what you are eating with mirchi, with masala, with however it is cooked.
Right.
This is how it should be. No separate food after between 15 and 18 months, you should transition them. That's what I did. And I think it worked brilliantly because before that they were eating pureed food. And then suddenly they started eating roti and sabzi.
Right.
Of course, made into small bites and softened and all of that. But yeah.
Right. Also for the woman, right, because she's gone through so much after childbirth. So and I feel that everybody takes care of you until childbirth, but after is the phase that is forgotten, right? So any supplementation there?
So the same thing. I think most women jump too fast to get back to normalcy. I think you've taken 9 months to build a baby. Give yourself 9 months to recover, right? And in those 9 months, again, if your diet has shifted, only 6 weeks you've eaten well, and then you're back to eating outside food or late night and all that, then you figure out how your diet is changing and you do your blood work, speak to your gynecologist or your specialist or your alternative practitioner, take a collective call, and then go on the minimum required supplement. Don't take too many things, because if you're not absorbing from your food, it is very likely you may not absorb from your vitamins also.
Right.
So conservative approach is the best approach. If it is a very bad situation, clearly you will need to be hospitalized and you will need transfusion and all that. But before you reach that stage, there are several things that you can do.
Right. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for taking time out and chatting with us.
Thank you, Mansi.